Mr. Speaker, sir, as I second, I want to congratulate the Senate Deputy Majority Leader. He is taking over reins of power this week that his boss is not around. Mr. Speaker, this is a straightforward amendment, and I would have expected Senator Tabitha, not Mutinda, Keroche, to tell us. You know, she's one of the best entrepreneurs, and she's the one who prepares your favorite drink most of the time. So I would have expected her to give us...
Senator Mohamed Faki.
My learned friend Senator Cherargei, referring to Senator Tabitha Keroche.
Senator Cherargei, have your seat.
Referring Senator Tabitha Keroche as Senator Tabitha Mutinda. Yet we know Senator Tabitha Keroche and Senator Tabitha Mutinda are two different distinguished senators in this house.
And he collected himself after that trip of the mount. He collected himself immediately. Maybe you can refer to Senator Tabitha Keroche properly, without mixing names.
My apologies, Mr. Speaker, sir. I think Senator Faki is a bit confused because both Mutindas are from UDA, the ruling party. They are, the Tabitas are both female senators. They are from UDA, they are entrepreneurs, they are married and what have you, and they are beautiful, all of them. So, Mr. Speaker, I think I can understand what Senator Faki is going through. Mr. Speaker, in seconding the bill, I would have expected, as I say, Senator Keroche, the distinguished senator of Nakuru and the future governor of Nakuru, to tell us what she has been doing, the magic she has been doing to build a multi-billion-dollar industry. She is one of the celebrated industrialists in this country, very industrious. She is a leader. She is one of the few senators, female senators that were elected in this house. One on our side, because two actually, because Jubilee crossed over to the majority side, Senator Dulo, and the other side, of course, Senator of Machakos, Senator Kava Mama. So, Madam Speaker, she's among the few. And jokingly on the street, Mr. Speaker, they normally refer that county as Nakuru girls. Mr. Speaker, in supporting this amendment, the work of NCA can be seen. Although, Mr. Speaker, we have had many challenges with NCA. Most of the collapsing buildings, you saw the other day when the floods became too much, a building collapsed within, I think, is it the Nairobi metropolis? And lives has been lost. We have many buildings that are substandard, that are collapsing daily, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as even we push for this amendment, I want to challenge the NCA to do due diligence. Mr. Speaker, I think in future, when a building collapses, the NCA officials must be charged with manslaughter because they are the ones who are approving these buildings. I remember when the Bunge Tower issue came up, we were discussing about certificate of occupation by Public Works. And these are Public Works and NCA work together. So, Speaker, as the supervisor of both the contractors and what happens at the construction site, Mr. Speaker, you are aware of the affordable housing program of His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Kenya, Dr. William Ruto. We are going to have enormous Kenyans, and I want to encourage young people, Mr. Speaker, it would not have been a better time for this amendment to come than now. Because one of the better bottom-up economic transformation agenda by His Excellency the President and our government is the issue of affordable housing. And we are encouraging, Mr. Speaker, young people to get to construction. So this amendment, Mr. Speaker, as they say in Bible, there are people like the sons of Issachar who knew times and signs. This is the sign to many young people and women that we have amended the law to give you a leeway to construct companies, to participate. That was viewed, Mr. Speaker, as a an industry that was only exclusive for some individuals, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there is construction of economic stimulus plans. The markets that we are building, even in Marimanti, even in Meru, Makutano, many other places, even in Nandi, Nandi Hills, Kapsabet, Kabiyet, Monsoriat, we are building under economic stimulus plan markets. Even in Kaiboi, we are building economic stimulus plan of markets. It means this decade and this century, Mr. Speaker, sir, belongs to construction and development. So many young people, Mr. Speaker, they always ask, and I want to challenge young people across the country, you need to take charge so that you are not misused and abused by politicians, Mr. Speaker. But personally, I don't do that. But I want to say a few politicians who have selfish interests will want to give handouts to young people. The only way, and I want to challenge my colleagues as Senate here, and even elected leaders, let us assist the young people to register companies. I know, Mr. Speaker, and you know we amended the euphoria on the ACPO, Mr. Speaker, where we say 30% of tender and contract should be awarded to young people. Mr. Speaker, if today, and I want to challenge OAG, Office of the Auditor General, Mr. Speaker, to do an audit, you will be shocked that the ACPO 30% that should be given to young people, women, people living with disabilities, Mr. Speaker, and I hope Senator Crystal Asike will speak to this. It is not the disabled. It is not the young. It is not the women. They are calling themselves senior youth. You find somebody running a youth company, but they are 70 years, 60 years, Mr. Speaker, and I think this amendment would have come at a better time because we want, Mr. Speaker, not to teach the young people to give them the fish, but to teach them how to fish. And I can tell you, Mr. Speaker, if today young people of Kenya take up this challenge and register companies and competitively get the awards of 30% as per the ACPO, Mr. Speaker, there will be less and no young people to be misused and abused in this country by selfish politicians, Mr. Speaker. Because whenever you go to rallies, you go to mandamanos, Mr. Speaker, the number of young people you get, the youth, are the majority, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, I want to challenge the youth, even as they, Mr. Speaker, you know, in this city and many other towns, and I've said there is what we call a luta. You disappear for 3 days. That is what happening. The young people, they disappear over the weekend, they go clapping, they go reverend, or they kupiga sherehe, Mr. Speaker. But they should know their future waits for them. The only way they can do is to register companies competent, Mr. Speaker. And that is why I want to challenge the Committee of Devolution, or even Public Accounts Committee where I sit. We must do audit to know in counties, for example, in Meru, in the 30% of the budget, how many young people's companies have been awarded tender in Meru, have been awarded in Nairobi, have been awarded in Nandi, in Mombasa, in anywhere across the country, Mr. Speaker, in Wajir, in Garissa, Mr. Speaker, in Lamu, so that as we do the law, let it not be a law on the paper, but it should have a value to many young people across the country, Mr. Speaker. And even startup bill, Mr. Speaker, we process on the startup bill in this country. The law has been, we process a startup bill on how to support. There were proposals even of giving young people tax holidays, tax exemptions, to encourage young people to build on their businesses going into the future. Mr. Speaker, you are aware over 60% of the population of Kenya, which is around 50 million, I know that they're about. Mr. Speaker, most of them, as you are aware, these 60%, Mr. Speaker, are young people. But we cannot have, Mr. Speaker, let us be fair. We cannot have the blue-collar jobs across the country that we can give to young people. There are many young people that are going through universities. They are graduating. The others are getting diplomas, degrees. You heard about junior secondary schools. There are 46,000 GSS interns in the country. And I can tell you, Mr. Speaker, even in Meru, and I know you have received SMSs from GSS. Mr. Speaker, I have not been having peace. I have been receiving messages, WhatsApp calls, WhatsApp messages, Facebook updates, Mr. Speaker, Facebook inboxes, Instagram and TikTok, by the junior secondary schools interns saying, what are you doing as a parliament to ensure we are employed on permanent and pensionable terms? I can bet you, Mr. Speaker, those 46,000 interns are young people. You saw the doctor strike the other day. Most of those intern doctors, Mr. Speaker, are young people. And you heard the Senator, and it is on record, Mr. Speaker, I shall be applying it to be expunged. You heard Senator Boni Khalwale saying, I went through Gumbaro, Mr. Speaker. And it is unanswered, and the Speaker of the day did not challenge him as a responsibility of fact in standing 105. I don't have a problem. I might have gotten the grade that Senator Khalwale said, but you should know we are many. If he meant it in bad faith that people who did not go to school are many, then I am happily part of that generation. But, Mr. Speaker, the point I'm making is that there are many interns, and going to Gumbaro is not a problem. There are many people who have become professors, who have PhD, who went through Gumbaro, and they are doing a wonderful job in our societies, Mr. Speaker. I am using an example, the strike that you saw of doctors. 90% of the doctors that were on street and clinical officers that were today demonstrating are young people. We cannot employ everybody. Even, Mr. Speaker, even us as members of parliament, we could not employ ourselves. We had to go to the people to seek for employment, Mr. Speaker. So when I heard young people say, members of parliament saying, why don't you generate employment? As themselves, as members of parliament, we could not hire ourselves, we could not employ ourselves. We had to go and beg for employment through the vote, Mr. Speaker, by the people, to be employed by the people. We could not employ ourselves. So what I'm just saying is that wherever we are, let us encourage young people you cannot be young forever, to seize up the opportunities. Even this one, registration fee, the fee does not exceed 15,000, Mr. Speaker. I don't think it's a lot of money. It is being fair to the hustlers. I know when they want to do startup businesses, Mr. Speaker, they can do it. It is something that we can remain in focus, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this NCA, when you look at the principle, the Parent Act on Section 17, in conclusion, talks about application for registration. Many young people, Mr. Speaker, to be registered as shall be exempted from paying the prescription registration fee. So in short, and Mr. Speaker, I pray and wish one day, this is what media should be giving headline, even in the national newspapers. That today the Parliament of Kenya through the Senate has proposed a law to ensure youth, PWDs, women, Mr. Speaker, can register free of charge. I'm praying for the day the media will run side stories on headline. Not talking about funny things that I don't want to mention on the floor of the House, Mr. Speaker. That is the prayer that our media, I know media are doing their job, they are exposing their ills, but I want to request them to run both positive and negative. When such a law comes, I expect it to receive prominence as a news so that young people can know we are doing something. Mr. Speaker, politicians and members of parliament are normally being blasted, Mr. Speaker, for doing nothing about the common man. But here we are working. But because we cannot go on the top of the mountain and use a trumpet to tell the world media should assist us, they cover more of negativity, Mr. Speaker. I want to encourage media as they write other stories to indicate that Parliament has moved to ensure that in terms of exemption from paying prescription registration fee, and I expect people, this is for hustlers, Mr. Speaker, this is in support of better. This is what we wanted for our country, where young people can be exempted from that, Mr. Speaker. Even in, and I'm happy, I think the other issues, Mr. Speaker, on registration of application for registration remains the same, like technical qualifications will remain the same. Necessary experience in involving construction. Mr. Speaker, I wish in future, and I know when it comes to the committee of the whole, we need to look at the experience. Because we want young people who go to study engineering, at least, Mr. Speaker, 1 or 2 years. Don't put it much. And that is what we did in the County Attorney Act, where we ensured, Mr. Speaker, that we put in place, Mr. Speaker, an experience. Because how many young people have experience? Mr. Speaker, many young people cannot get to employment because they are being told you must have experience. You must have a guarantee. You must have, in fact, Mr. Speaker, we should be looking even and exploring how young people can access credit. Because you tell them, bring collateral security. When you go home, your title deed belongs to your grandfather or your great-great-grandfather, and the bank wants to loan you collateral security. You don't have a logbook Mr. Speaker, you have just finished school. That is the pain of most of the young people in this country. They want to do something, but they cannot do it because they need collateral security. They need logbook, they need title deed, they need pay slip. They cannot, Mr. Speaker. And you know the jobs, online jobs that, Mr. Speaker, the president is trying to pursue. You can't show, I know banks will take long to adapt. Because if you tell them you are working online, they don't understand how you earn your money, Mr. Speaker. And that is why the president is going to America, other places, to look for online jobs, Mr. Speaker. And that is why the ICT hubs, I know you are a member of National Assembly and constituency ICT hubs, we will build across the country, Mr. Speaker. Even in my place, there is a place called Taptengele, where you press and get dollars through the process of Taptengele technical, then you get dollars. To bankers, they don't understand how can they give a loan somebody who works online. But they need to know that young people are moving it differently. I know there were issue of Bitcoin, but that Bitcoin in the currency, South America country has collapsed, Mr. Speaker. So young people need the support. They cannot have collateral security. They can't have title deed. They cannot have a logbook. They cannot have payslip. And that is why as a nation we must see, and this is one of the ways to rectify, Mr. Speaker, in ensuring that place, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, finally, on this amendment, I agree. This is one of the bills that I have unconditional support towards it, although it comes from the National Assembly, Mr. Speaker. This is one of the brilliant bills. Let us give a chance to young people to feel they are part of us. Mr. Speaker, the reason most young people, and I heard Senator Miraj Abdullah in the morning saying the reason, many people don't know that in your tenure in National Assembly, you are very instrumental in ensuring that Muguka and Mira were put as part of the crop development, and it's a legal crop. The argument was that when you see young people consuming, even during daytime, it's not because there is a job, it is because they're idle. And they say the idle mind is a devil's workshop. I know, Mr. Speaker, there is issue of a hustler fund that His Excellency the President as his pet project of better economic. And we want the young people to borrow that money and put in place and generate their income, Mr. Speaker, through the hustler fund. And that hustler fund, you don't need collateral security. You only need your phone and yourself to be able to get that money, Mr. Speaker. So therefore, Mr. Speaker, I really want to appeal to the young people, women, and people living with disability, Mr. Speaker. Interestingly, Senate, almost 50%, Mr. Speaker, are young people. I expect all the young people in the Senate, including myself, to say something about this bill. Mr. Speaker, we have a number of women senators. I expect them to speak to this bill, Mr. Speaker. We have a number of people living with disabilities or differently able, led by Senator Crystal Asige, Senator Mbugua. I expect them to fine-tune and look at the law and tell us, is it okay? Is it in line with what their constituency wants to look like, Mr. Speaker? Are they comfortable? And that is what I wanted to put in place, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, going into the future, let us amend all laws that is possible within the counties. And I've challenged the Devolution Committee, Senator Abbas, the Senator Chairperson, should do an audit. The Finance and Budget Committee, I saw the Chairperson, Senator Captain Ali Roba, Governor. Finance and Budget should table a report on the compliance of 30%. We want to know what Meru, how many companies that belong to young people, even here in Nairobi through Senator Mutinda. And I'm happy the Vice Chairperson of Finance and Budget she's here. She should tell the country how many counties are complying with 30% rule. Even in Nakuru, we want to know how many youthful companies are giving business to young people. Mr. Speaker, and that is the future we want to see, Mr. Speaker. But we should feel encouraged. We are not encouraging young people to do corruption. We want them to do legit, not chemical business like some people would want to do. We want them to do legit, not chemical business, Mr. Speaker, and finish in the words of the great man called Bob Marley, who unfortunately died in cancer at 36 years. And I want to encourage young people, because young people, Mr. Speaker, every day would want to be rich overnight. They want to be instant millionaires. But when Bob Marley was being interviewed, He was asked by a reporter, how many wealth and possessions have you acquired through your concerts and selling of your songs? He asked him, what do you mean? Is it riches, possession, wealth? What do you mean? Then he says, in terms of wealth. Bob Marley answered this, and this should encourage us even in leadership. His riches and true riches and wealth is to have a life full of love and to live forever, Mr. Speaker. With those beautiful words of Bob Marley, may his soul live and Rastafarians don't die. They transit to another world. Encourage young people as I second this bill. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I beg to second.
Honorable Senators, I propose the question that the National Construction Authority Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bills number 59 of 2022, be now read a second time.